day, students. Today we want to look at the graphs, the sine graph. Now we want to construct the sine graph. Before we do the sine graph, construct the sine graph. First of all, if we having y is should be equal to sine theta, y equals sine theta. So theta represent the angles between 0 and 360. So I'm going to be giving it an interval of 30 degrees. So theta represent the angles between 0 and 360. So from 0, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 80, 210, 240, 270, 300, 330, 360. Now, to be able to get the value for y, so y represents what? Sine theta. So when theta is 0, what will be the value for y? Sine 0 is what? 0. So you put it there, 0. Then when theta is 30, so sine 30 will give us 0.5. So this is 0.5. When theta is 60, sine 60 is 0.866. So this is 0.866. When theta is 90, sine 90 will give us what? 1.0. So this is 1.0. Then when theta is 120, now here you realize that we will be in the second quadrant. When theta is 120, we will be in the second quadrant, and sine in the second quadrant is what? Positive. So now you now have what? The equivalent of 120 in the second quadrant to be what? 180 minus 120. So 180 minus 120 is what? 60. And the sine 60 is 0.8660. So since is positive, to be plus 0.8660. So you put it here in the table. When theta is 150, so this 150 is still in the second quadrant. So and sine is positive in the second quadrant. It's positive in the second quadrant. So that means you are going to have positive, and the equivalence of 150 in the second quadrant is 180 minus 150. 180 minus 150. So 180 minus 150 gives you what? 30. So the sine of 30 is what? 0.5. Since it's going to be positive, it will be what? Plus 0.5. Then when theta is 180, so sine 180 will be what? In the 180 is still within the second quadrant, it's going to be positive. So that means the equivalence of 180 in the second quadrant is what? 180 minus 180, which is what? 0. So sine of 0 will still give us what? 0. Then sine when theta is 210. When theta is 210, and that means 210 is now in the third quadrant. So sine in the third quadrant is what? Negative. So that means the reason why you're having negative here, sine. Then the equivalence of 210 in the first quadrant is what? 210 minus 180, which will give us 210 minus 180 is 30. Look for the sine of 30, which is 0.5. Since in the third quadrant, sine is negative, to be what? Minus 0.5. Then when theta is 240, when theta is 240 minus, if you are seeing the third quadrant, sine is negative in the third quadrant. That is the reason why you have a minus sine. You look for the equivalence of 240 in the third quadrant. It will be what? 240 minus 180. 240 minus 180. 240 minus 180 will give you what? 60. So in the third quadrant, sine is what? Negative. Sine 60 is what? 0.866. So we have a minus 0.866. Then in the when theta is 270, in the third quadrant we have 270, so sine 270. So theta is sine is negative in third quadrant, so it will be negative. The equivalence of 270 in the third quadrant will be 270 minus 180, which is what? 90. Sine of 90 is what? 1. So since it's going to be negative in the third quadrant, it will be minus 1. As you are getting the figures, make sure you are substituting into the table. When sine is what? When theta is 300, we've now moved to the fourth quadrant. In the fourth quadrant, sine is what? Negative. In the fourth quadrant, sine is negative. So sine is negative in the fourth quadrant. So that means you now have what? The equivalence of 300 in the fourth quadrant is 360 minus 300. 360 minus 300 will give us what? 60. So that means in the sine 60 is 0.866. So since we are in the fourth quadrant, it's going to be minus 0.866. So we look at when theta is what? When theta is 330. When theta is 330, so we are seeing the fourth quadrant, sine is negative in the fourth quadrant. So sine, the equivalence of 330 in the fourth quadrant will be 360 minus 330. Minus 330. So 360 minus 330 will give us minus sine 30. So sine 30 is for 0.5. Since it is negative in the third quadrant, it will be minus 0.5. Then when theta is 360, when theta is 360, now we now have what? We are saying the fourth quadrant is going to be minus. So the equivalence of 360 in the fourth quadrant is with 360 minus 360, which is what? 0. So minus, so what is sine? 0 is 0. So 0 is a neutral number, so it's going to be what? 0. So from there, you are going to plot your graph. You will plot your graph. Now on my graph paper, on the x-axis, is the value where you are putting the value for theta. So I'm using 1 centimeter to represent 30 degrees on the x-axis. So that means having 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, 240, 270, 300, 330. So 1 centimeter. On the y-axis, I'm using 2 centimeters to represent 0.5 units. So that this is 0.5, then another 2 centimeters and 1. This minus 0.5, another 2 centimeters minus 1. Are you following? Now, we are now going to plot the graph. So, when theta is 0, y is 0. So, at this point, theta is 0. Of this x-axis represent for theta 0, y is 0 at this point. When theta is 30, y is 0.5. So, theta is 30 here, y is 0.5. This is their point of intersection. When theta is 60, y is 0.866. Now you realize that here it will be difficult for me to get 0.866. So that is why I will now do it to 1 decimal place. So that means instead of looking for 0.866 to 1 decimal place, I'm having 0.9. 0.866 to 1 decimal place is 0.9. So I'm going to plot 0.9 against 60. So this is 60. So on the y-axis, I'm having what? 0.9. Here, it means in 2 lines to be what? 0.1. So that means this is 50 is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 0.9 will be here. So the point of intersection of these 2 lines to be what? Is 0.9. When y is what? 90. When theta is 90, y is 1. Theta is 90 here, y is 1. So this is their point of intersection. When theta is 120, y is 0.866. So again, I'm going to do it to one decimal. That will be 0.9. When theta is 120, y is 0.9. Then when theta is 150, y is 0.5. So this theta is 150 here, y is 0.5, they meet here. When theta is 180, y is 0 is going to meet on this point of x. When theta is 210, y is minus 0.5. This is 210, this minus 0.5 down here, so they meet here. When theta is 240, y is minus 0.866. So again, I'll do that to one decimal place. It will be what? Minus 0.9. So theta is what? 240, y is minus 0.9. They meet here. When theta is 270, y is minus 1. Theta is 270 here, y is minus 1. So this is their point of intersection. When theta is 300, y is minus 0.866. To one decimal place will give us minus 0.9. Theta is 300 here, y is minus 0.9. When theta is 330, y is minus 0.5. Theta is 330 here, y is minus 0.5. When theta is 360, y is 0 on this point. So now, you now join the points together, you realize it will give you a sinusoidal wave. So this is a sine graph. Now let's do another example using a scale of 1 centimeter to represent 30 degrees on the theta axis. This one will be on the x axis, and 2 centimeter to represent 1 unit on the y axis. Draw the graph of y equals tan theta. So we are told to use a scale of what? The interval should be 30 degrees. So that means for theta, we have 0, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, like that till you get to 360. So we are now going to be looking for the corresponding value for y. So the equation is y equals tan theta. So when theta is what? 0, what will be y? So that means tan 0 is what? 0. So you are going to substitute into the table. So as you are doing it here, make sure you are substituting in the table. When theta is 30, so what will be y? So that means it will be what? Y will tan 30 is 0.5774. So 0.5774. When theta is 60, so tan 60 is 1.732. Then when theta is 90, tan 90 is infinity. If you check the Forfigure table, is going to be very large. The calculator will give you syntax error, so it shows that is infinity. Then when y is what? When theta is 120. When theta is 120, now we are in the second quadrant. Since we are in the second quadrant, tan in the second quadrant is negative, so we're going to carry minus. Then tan, you look for the equivalence of 120 in the second quadrant. The equivalence of 120 in the second quadrant is 180 minus 120. 180 minus 120 will give you 60. So you are going to look for tan 60. Tan 60 is 1.732. So since tan is negative in the second quadrant, it's going to be minus 1.732. Then when theta is 150, so tan 150 will give us, in the second quadrant, tan is negative. So in the second quadrant, we are having the equivalence of 150 is from 180 minus 150. 180 minus 150 is what? 30. So minus tan 30. Tan 30 is for 0.5774. So in the second quadrant, so it is going to be what? Minus 0.5774. When y is what? When theta is 180. So that means if you are seeing the second quadrant, it's going to be on value of theta here will be what? Minus. Then the equivalence of 180 in the second quadrant is 180 minus 180, which is what, 0. So we have it times 0 give us 0. 0 is a neutral number value. Then when theta is 210, when theta is 210, you realize that we are now in the third quadrant. Now the value of tan in the tangent in the third quadrant is what? Positive. So we are going to have positive. So the equivalence of 210 in the third quadrant is 210 minus 180. 210 minus 180 is 30. Tan 30 is what? 0.5774. So since it is positive in the third quadrant, it's going to be plus 0.5774. Then when theta is 240, when theta is 240, we are seeing it in the third quadrant. Tan in the third quadrant is what? Is positive. So that means it's going to be plus tan. The equivalence of 240 in 240 in the third quadrant will be what? 240 minus 180. So 240 minus 180 will give you what? 60. So tan 60 is 1.732. Since it's going to be positive in the third quadrant, it will plus 1.732. Then when theta is 270, when theta is 270, you realize in the third quadrant, tan is what? Positive in the third quadrant. The equivalence of 270 in third quadrant is what? 270 minus 180, which is 90. So it's going to be positive. So that means the value of tan 90 is what? Infinity. It's going to be very large. That is infinity. Then when theta is 300, when theta is 300, you realize that 300 is in the fourth quadrant. Tan in the fourth quadrant is what? Is negative. Tan in the fourth quadrant is negative. So you have a minus tan. The equivalence of 300 in the fourth quadrant is 360 minus 300. 360 minus 300 is 60. So tan 60 is 1.732. In the fourth quadrant, you have a minus 1.732. When tan is what? When theta is 330. So we are seeing the fourth quadrant. In the fourth quadrant, tan is what? Negative. So that means we having tan. The equivalence of 330 in the first quadrant will be 360 minus 330, which will give you tan 30. So tan 30 is 0.5774. Since it is negative in the fourth quadrant, it's going to be minus 0.5774. Then tan 360. 360 in the fourth quadrant is what? Is negative. So in the equivalence of that in the first quadrant, 360 minus 360, which is what? 0. So tan 0 will give us what? 0, which is a neutral value. So from there, we are now going to plot the graph. To plot the graph, so you realize that you must be filling in the table as we are doing the calculation. So this is a table for the graph of tan theta we want to do now. Now, when x, you must take notes. How are you going to, first of all, I am using 1 centimeter to represent 30 degrees on the x-axis. So 1 centimeter is representing 30 degrees on the x-axis. Then the question says 2 centimeter to represent 1 unit on the y-axis. So 2 centimeter is representing 1, 2, 3, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. Now, when x is 0, when theta is 0, y is 0. So when theta is 0, y is 0 at this point. When theta is what? 30, y is 0.5774. But because I cannot get 0.577 from this, you do it to 1 decimal place, which should give me 0.6. So you look for 0.6 on the y-axis, and then it will meet with where it is 30 degrees here. So this is 0.6, that means 30. When y is what? When theta is 60, y is 1.732. 1.732 to 1 decimal place is 1.7. So you look for it. This is 1.1, 1.567, so and 60, they meet there. Now, how are you going to plot infinity? On infinity like this, you are going to use a straight line. You draw a broken line vertical like this across the positive and y-axis and negative axis. So you draw a vertical line like this. So broken line showing that is infinity. Then when theta is 120, y is minus 1.7322. One decimal place gives us minus 1.7. This 120, this 1.7, emit here. When theta is 150, y is minus 0.5774. To one decimal place, that is minus 0.6. So this is 150, this is minus 0.6. When theta is 180, y is 0. You plot here. When theta is 210, y is 0.5774. So making 0.56, you plot. When theta is 240, y is 1.737. So you plot that. Then when theta is 270, it's going to be infinity. You draw a vertical line up and down like this, broken line on 270. Then also you plot the remaining part. So by the time you are through, you realize that this is how the the graph of tan theta will look like. So it's going to look like this. For your work practice, using a scale of 1 centimeter to represent 30 degrees on the theta axis and 2 centimeter to represent 1 unit on the y-axis, draw the graphs of y equals cos theta. Make sure you like, subscribe and comment on this video. Thank you.